This morning we're up and gone by 4:30 a.m. It's actually pitch dark, but I'm going to use these pics to give you something to look at while I talk. It's windy as, and I'm worried, not just by the 40-kilometre drive in the early morning dark with dust and sand swirling around, but we're supposed to be doing our first hot air balloon flight, and I can only presume it's cancelled. The wind is just too strong. We know basically where we're going as we passed the place on the way up yesterday, but I still don't want to collect a zebra or a giraffe in the dark. We get to the hot air balloon place okay. Phew. I expect to go in and be told the flight is off, but instead we're given paperwork to fill out and an initial briefing for the flight. Evidently the launch site is a few kilometres away and the wind there is very gentle. The pilot of our balloon is unsurprised. This is usual. We all pile into some Land Cruiser troop carrier buses for the trip to the launch site. For the first kilometre or so the sand and dust pelts the windows, but it eases off as we go. By the time we get to the launch site, it's mostly still. Okay, now I just have to panic over the flight itself. Neither of us has done this before and it's one of our bucket list items. I don't know what to expect. By the time we arrive, the ground crews are setting up the 3 balloons. There are about 20 people, so 7 per balloon plus a pilot. The baskets are pretty big and we have enough propane fuel for a 1-hour flight. Excuse the orientation change, I included some social media footage. Soon the first balloon is off and away, rising gently into the morning sky. The burners are surprisingly loud. Let's see first one away. Then it's our turn. It's weird as we rise slowly, skating just above the ground. Eventually we gain more height, and the beautiful scenery where the Tsauchab River winds its way to its end in the Namib Desert reveals itself. Because we're moving at the same speed as the wind, there's no sound apart from the chatter of the passengers and the occasional roar of the burners. I was hoping to get enough height to see over onto the Namib dunes, but our balloon did not want to play. The others climbed to much greater heights than us. Angela was a bit relieved that we stayed lower. She is not enjoying this at all. The arid, rugged landscape was beautiful in the early morning light. The only trees are along the now dry course of the river, which would flow only occasionally. To our north, the huge dunes of the Namib march away into the distance. What you hear about wildlife not being disturbed by hot air balloons seems to be true. We saw this female oryx and her calf. A little later we saw these ostriches out on the plain. This is one of the lodges in the area. I think it's Kalahari Lodge. The balloons seem to indulge in a slow dance, rising and falling and going pretty much where the wind decided to take them. The pilot has only so much control. Even using the burner to gain height, there is a burst of flame and then a wait to see what the balloon will do. Sometimes you got very low. Here we are crossing the river. The balloon thought we needed a close look. Yes, we are headed straight for that bank. We did miss it though, but not by much. Also got a close-up view of the top of this tree. Push this across the river. And the plane's just landed over there. I think probably both landing up here. After about an hour, our final destination hove into view. There is a post-flight breakfast and the tables have been set out at the base of the dunes. One by one the balloons land. The one on the right here just parked itself and seemed not to want to come down. We were not so lucky. We did 2 bounces before coming to a rest. The basket tilted over quite a way, but the ground crew righted us. The first bounce was quite a jolt. I can see why they use strong, flexible wicket for the baskets now. A quick check to see the ground crew is doing it right, and we are so close it's just a short walk to breakfast. Note the 4-wheel drive in the background with the balloon trailer attached. Right, what was that about a champagne breakfast? These are a couple of the pilots who also served up breakfast. Angela was quick to grab a seat. I think she was relieved to get down. She loves helicopters, but hot air ballooning not so much. A few champagnes seem to act as a stress relief though. In typical Angela fashion, she says she would do it again now she knows what to expect. Definitely a keeper. Breakfast gets underway with a variety of food on offer while the ground crews pack up the balloons. The zebra salami was especially delicious. Not many takers for that. Don't understand why. I think we cleaned up most of it. Evidently made on the farm next door to where the chief pilot lives. Yum. I noticed quite a number of these small birds running around, also looking for breakfast, I suppose. It's only 8 a.m. and quite cool still. Some people start climbing the dune behind where we all sat. It's pretty big. This photo doesn't show the top. When it comes time to go, one of the ground crew had to run up the dune to get them. Turns out they're not with us. We get driven back to the meeting point and I buy a t-shirt to remember the occasion by, not that I'll ever forget. The austere but beautiful scenery itself is unforgettable and we're not finished with it yet. Overall, the balloon flight was a little over 12 kilometres. This is the track the wind took us. We flew from right to left, ending up at the base of the dunes. The short double back is where we walked from the spot the balloon landed to breakfast. We drive the 40 kilometres back to Sesriem and get our park passes to go out to the Deadvlei, which is the end of the Tsauchab River. We'll pass along the road right where our balloon landed. We headed west out to Sossusvlei and the Deadvlei, where the Tsauchab River ends in the sands of the Namib Desert. This is reputedly one of the best ways to get a close-up view of these big dunes. At the start of the drive we see this combination of dunes and rocky hills that have been partly covered by sand. Then the dunes take over, running either side of the river plain. The course of the river here follows the distant line of trees that survive on the water deep below the surface when the river's not running, which is most of the time. The wind sculpts and moves the dunes over time, forming these sharp ridges. The colours are amazing, the orange dunes against the intense blue sky. Several of the dunes have parking close by so you can go and inspect at close range. Driving off the road is not permitted. By the number of signs I would say some people don't get the hint. And climbing the dunes is discouraged apart from the ones with specific access. This is dune 45 and we stop for a closer look. It's pretty big but it's not the biggest. The edges of the dunes where they meet the valley floor are quite distinct. The wind blows the dunes along at a slow pace and sweeps up the sand after them. The wind is not as intense as it sounds here, but you can see how it pushes the dunes west over the years. The sand is soft and cool on my bare feet, but no, I'm not going all the way up. The view from my low elevation is quite spectacular though. We then head off towards the west and the Deadvlei. The last 5 kilometres is a sand track, so I reduce the tyre pressure and off we go. There are quite a few cars stuck along this stretch. It was pretty soft, but if you held up your momentum you were okay. The Lolux did not raise a sweat along here. Sorry, no footage. Number 1 camera person was driving and number 2 camera person was hanging on as we bumped and slewed over the chopped up sand. Yahoo! And we make it no problems. If you didn't have a 4-wheel drive and still wanted to go and have a look, then there's the taxi service. By the way, this is the solid, unrutted part of the track. As you can see, this is a popular spot and a lot of people make the drive through the sand successfully. The dunes here are complex and beautiful. They stretch hundreds of kilometres north and south of here and maybe 100 or more to the west in the ocean. I think the northern limit of the Namib Desert is the Kalahari River at the border with Angola. We'll meet the Namib again in that direction. Angela doesn't join me on the walk to the Deadvlei. She suffers from sunstroke and the sun is intense. A lot of people doing the walk seem also not to have a clue. They have no hats, no water, and often clothes more suitable to a city cafe with shoes to match. Oh well. On the walk you see those long-legged beetles that feature in the David Attenborough documentary about the Namib Desert. After about 20 minutes slogging through the sand, the Deadvlei comes into sight. This used to be the end of the Tsauchab River, or maybe formed in a higher than usual flood, but the dunes have cut it off. The name means dead marsh or dead lake, and the trees that once grew there have long since died. The remaining stumps are thought to be 600 or 700 years old. Initially, the surrounding dunes don't seem that big, but as you get your perspective, you can see they're huge. The people climbing them are mere specks. It's a bit like Uluru, but more runny. I drink in the experience, getting what photos I can, but I don't have the skill to capture it properly. Early morning or later afternoon would be great for photography here. After an hour or so, I make my way back. The dunes in the distance are so Lawrence of Arabia. The white patch on the left in this picture looks like concrete, but it's old river sediment. I'll leave you alone with the scenery for a moment. When I get back to the car, it turns out Angela's been wildlife spotting with this jackal in the car park. At one point there are also vultures circling. At my age this is not a good sign. Time to go. We'd intended to have a look at the Sesriem gorge on the way back, but we couldn't find the turn-off. I remember where it was the next day when we were halfway to our next destination. Anyway, the bar called. It was closed, but we went back later for a couple of drinks and a chat with some of the other tourists. This is a popular spot with South Africans, and we met a lot on this trip. Tomorrow we're off to our next destination via the famous McGregor's Bakery in Solitaire. We pretty much have to stick to the main road. There isn't a lot of choice. It looks to be a decent unpaved road, so the car will be happy. See you next time. Oh, and please like and subscribe, as there's a lot more to come in this series. Thank you.